Purple. A color both loved and loathed by players of the Digimon TCG. Constantly walking a fine line between broken and unplayable, the color is in an interesting place as we head through the pages of Digimon Liberator. Yuuki and her Impmon haven't quite lived up to the hype, and Violet and her Ghostmon haven't quite earned their purple credentials either. So instead, I want to focus on one of the breakout competitive hits to arrive in Special Booster 2.0. His reputation precedes him, and having shed his yellow luster, Lordknightmon now arrives to smash everything in sight and put the fear of purple into new and returning players alike. Purple has this interesting dynamic of telling you exactly what it is without actually being straightforward. It's the color of villains, with many of its core mechanics focused around themes of sacrifice, returning to life, and destroying resources. Vampires, ghouls, devils, and other denizens of the dark make up the ranks of Purple's legions. But to be fair, it's not exclusively the color of evil. Many of our favorite protagonists lean into the darkness and the vicious power it affords them. Among many purple cards, you'll come across effects that require you to trash cards from your hand or mill them from the deck, skills that let you spawn bodies from beyond the grave, and a surprising amount of memory manipulation too. Often, purple cards will want you to destroy your own Digimon in order to gain some extremely potent effects. But arguably the aspect that makes purple as powerful as it has been historically is its ability to use the trash as a second hand. Trash interaction has been very limited historically for all the other colors, and that fact has led purple to some frightening competitive success. Lordknightmon steps into the fray, donning the purple for the second time, funny enough. Originally a board-swarming hero of yellow, Lordknightmon received a mediocre purple retrain for BT13's Royal Knights deck, supporting King Drossel's Faithful Warriors and the Lucemon archetype. Not that anyone has ever used it for that. But really, BT19 is where Lordknightmon truly shines, being able to leverage both the Knightmon lines and the DarkKnightmon lines, while also being a fantastic and generic choice for a lot of decks. One thing I do appreciate on Bandai's part is that the new Lordknightmon support tips its hat towards the old BT5 deck, playing into board swarming and making yourself more powerful as your board fills up. And of course, getting an X antibody form these days is going to do wonders for your competitive viability. Now, before we dive into the deck list proper, I just want to note that this list is more to illustrate a concept and flesh out the X antibody meta archetype for newer players. A lot of X antibody decks don't even necessarily need Cool Boy anymore, but I thought that leaning into that classic approach will help players understand the mechanics a little better as they graduate towards the more conventional build. So, like most X antibody decks, the idea is to chain together a stack with your Digimon's base forms and their X antibody counterparts to draw through your deck quickly and activate powerful effects. Usually, your X antibody boss monster is an absolutely broken level 6 with a massive wall of card text that basically translates to "your opponent dies now." In this case, you're looking to build towards Lordknightmon X antibody. It has collision and piercing on top of a few other broken effects. When digivolving for each of your Digimon, you can de-digivolve an opponent's by one level, and then one of your opponent's Digimon cannot digivolve until the end of their turn. It also has an all-turns effect where if you meet its X antibody requirements, in this case having Lordknightmon or the X antibody option card in its sources, all of your Digimon with Knightmon in their name gain Alliance and a 3000 DP buff. This card shrinks down enemy boss monsters, prevents Ace Digimon from blast digivolving on their targets, and can dispense with enemy Digimon while still dishing out damage through piercing. It's about as broken as they come, but it does require some setup to really pay off. Specifically, you need a big board to shrink enemy targets by a meaningful amount, and you can only dish out multiple security checks with Alliance if you have other bodies to suspend for its activation requirements. The regular Lordknightmon does the trick, playing a level 4 or lower Digimon when digivolving or on play, which always ensures that you have something to charge up its X antibody form. This card also has a nice once per turn redirection during the opponent's turn, which can help wall your opponent out. This actually gives the card some value in the awkward situations where you might be forced to hard slam it. Now, the line we use to get up to the Knights is the Cerberusmon X Antibody line. The cards all revolve around dark animals, and more importantly, playing Digimon by effects, which is perfect for the deck. Dobermon gives your stack blocker and has an inheritable skill to draw you a card when a Digimon is played by an effect. Dobermon X draws and trashes one when digivolving and gains retaliation when played. Its inheritable skill nets you a memory when a Digimon is played by an effect. In a notable spin on the classic X Antibody dynamic, you get to use its on-play effect if you meet its X Antibody requirements. Then we have Cerberusmon, who gets back a dark animal from the trash on play or when digivolving, and its inheritable effect gives a Digimon played by an effect, Rush. Cerberusmon X has the same draw and trash effect as Dobermon X, and the same dynamic to trigger its on-play effect when meeting its X Antibody requirements, allowing you to play a purple level 3 Digimon from the trash. Its inheritable skill lets you sacrifice another Digimon to unsuspend on the swing, which is where a lot of Lordknightmon X's damage output comes from. X Antibody Protoform is the power-crept version of the classic white option card, acting almost as a training option by letting you digivolve into an X Antibody for one less memory by slotting it into the sources of a Digimon in play. It also has an effect to help you stabilize when your Digimon are about to be removed from play, letting you fetch back a card from its stack and then placing the protoform on top of your security to quote-unquote heal. There's a reason this card is crazy expensive. And as mentioned at the outset, we are running Cool Boy to harken back to the classic X Antibody decks. Cool Boy has an on-play effect to check the top 3 cards of the deck and add both a Digimon with the X Antibody trait and an option card with the X Antibody trait. Obviously, we have plenty of targets. Cool Boy also has an effect on your turn that triggers when your Digimon digivolves into its X Antibody form of the same level, suspending the Tamer to draw a card and gain 1 memory. This card has been the engine of so many X Antibody decks, allowing for cheap and efficient searches while refunding the memory invested almost immediately. In multiples, this card helps you go from level 3 all the way to level 6 without much trouble. The rest of the deck is basically a grab bag of purple good stuff, with Anubismon providing a potent alternative top end. It swarms the board, it blows things up, or sometimes it draws a ton of cards. In any case, it's limited for a reason. Alongside Anubismon, we have a very tight package of Leviamon and Leviamon X. The former is a decent target off of Anubismon's effect, or just a good way to prune other swarm decks. The latter is a trap that you can lay for swarm decks, or an alternative win condition considering how easily it devours boards and security stacks when paired with Cerberusmon X's inheritable. The floodgates are your best targets to play off of your many effects to basically frustrate your opponent's ability to build or rebuild. And wisdom training helps you climb your stacks even faster while finding your pieces. The deck runs pretty smoothly, and while purple memory boosts probably edge out Cool Boy in terms of utility, the idea is the same. Establish resources, fill your trash with playable targets, and then make a big game-winning push with Lordknightmon X. If you can't beat the opponent on that turn, your floodgates should render them unable to respond. This is the quintessential X Antibody deck, and I'd say it wears its purple flair quite well. It's also incredibly frustrating to play against, but hey, it's got good company in that sense. There's no qualms about it. Lordknightmon is a meta deck. In fact, in the weeks leading up to the release of Special Booster 2.0, players legitimately feared that it would be more oppressive than Mirage Galgamon or Imperial Dramon. That hasn't quite panned out, but the deck is no slouch. Trust me. Looking at your matchups into the color pie though, the picture is a little bit complicated. Red matchups go from generally favorable to horrendous depending on 2 factors. Is your opponent playing red hybrids, and are they running Crimson Blaze? If you can dodge those 2, then yeah, you're going to do pretty well into red decks thanks to the absurd damage output that you have access to, and since you can spawn a ton of blockers to dull their aggression. Blue decks are pretty unfavorable matchups because they can race you to the OTK, and decks like Mirage Galgamon can simply bounce your entire board away and effectively get around your floodgates and blockers. You can mess with Imperial a little bit thanks to Lordknightmon X's de-digivolve and lockdown effects, but they can probably just out your board anyway and then run you over. Yellow decks aren't much of an issue because your damage output is sufficient to outpace their healing, and while blanket DP minus effects can be annoying, you can still usually float enough bodies throughout the game to play around that. Green decks can be a little tricky to deal with because they can suspend down your board and take away your ability to smash their face in. Pretty much every green deck is also packing a Quartzmon, which can profit off of your wide boards and potentially OTK you after you try and fail to go for game. Bottom decking effects also hurt a lot because you don't even get your Digimon back to hand to put them into the trash again. Purple decks are pretty bad matchups, unfortunately, because Lordknightmon's board swarming is a boon to most popular strategies in this color. Leviamon will devour your boards, Purple Hybrid will mill you out thanks to all the different colors that you'll have and will blow up your fodder pretty easily, and Takemi Kazuchi just doesn't care because it'll OTK you back if you fail to lethal it. Black decks are not really an issue because you're just faster than them, and you laugh in the face of their attempts to block you or wall up in general thanks to D-Digivolution and Collision. Getting into a scrap with D-Brigade might be low-key hilarious, and by hilarious I mean frustrating, but you probably have nothing to worry about here. As for some of your particular meta matchups that we didn't mention already, you do quite well into Mother Shoto because you can prevent their actual Digimon from turning into aces, and access to both Collision and Alliance can let you punch over the Mother herself. Likewise, Magna X will struggle to wall you out because you can smash its armor with Collision, and then prevent the stack from digivolving back into Magna X on the opponent's next turn. If you're looking for a bad matchup, I'd say Red Base Ancient Garurumon just has the answer to pretty much anything you can do while being more than aggressive enough to run you over. So it's important when looking holistically at this deck that, of course, it is a meta deck, and while its power has maybe been exaggerated to a degree, it still commands a lot of respect and does pretty favorably into most of what you might play against in this particular format. Okay, and that'll do it for Purple, and this episode of Welcome to Liberator. Next time, we'll be covering the color Black and trying to figure out just how exactly a certain character from Digimon Liberator managed to destroy the competition as thoroughly as he did, with what players have traditionally considered a meme of a deck. If you've been enjoying the series so far, make sure to show some love by liking the video, leaving a comment, and of course, subscribing. And hey, it might be a little bit crazy, but I would really love to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I obviously can't do that without all of you. So, if you can, help me make for a very Merry Christmas indeed.